My guest today is Burton Smith. Burton, how you doing?
Good. How are you doing today?
I'm doing really well. It was great to see you in Sandusky, Ohio last week. I caught one of your sessions. And for our viewers, tell us, what do you do for a living?
So I work at a little startup called Microsoft. Most people have probably never heard of it before, but yeah, I've been there with them for about 3 years. I do software engineering for them. I primarily work on a design system for part of our internal systems. So I help build a component library for that.
Hard to believe, but I've actually have heard of this startup.
Well, that's great. We're
Yeah.
getting the word out.
And then you're doing also a lot of talks at conferences as well, like at CodeMesh. One of the things you talk about, what kind of things do you talk about?
So I talk about this last conference. I talked quite a bit about web components and building reusable component libraries with web components, and a little bit about UX and getting teams up and going with UX.
Let's talk about UX. One of your sessions was something about questions to ask.
Yeah, yeah. It's 5 questions to ask to get you started with UX.
Whoa, let's see. Is it best to list the 5 questions first, or should we just go through them one at a time? What do you think?
Well, let's list them out, and then we can just hammer through them.
All right. What are they? What's number one?
Okay. First one is, who is the user? Who are you targeting with what you're building? Second one is, what are they trying to accomplish? Third is, how can we help them do that? Fourth is, what do we want the user to do? And fifth is, how do we incentivize them to do that?
So who, what, how?
Yeah, there we go.
All right. All right. So, who is the user? You're going to build an application, and it's not going to exist in a vacuum. Somebody's going to use it, presumably, right?
Yeah, right. Exactly. So I think this is where it gets interesting, and especially as we start to talk to UX about UX, is because I think a lot of times there's this unfortunate marketing that happens with UX, where teams tend to, especially if they're not a visual designer of some kind, they're like, "Oh, this is not for me. I'm checking out." Right? I'm not a visual designer of any kind. This is not a topic that I need to be paying attention
So
to.
they surround it with somebody else's problem field, which
Exactly.
essentially makes it invisible.
Yep. Exactly. Right. They just throw it over the fence to someone else, and hopefully they'll take care of it. But in reality, it's not that way for most of us. Like we see these other acronyms. We see UX a lot, right? But then we see other
User
acronyms
experience.
like DX. That's a very popular one.
DX is
Developer experience, right? So when you start using a tool or library, we often will be like, well, the developer experience for this thing is really nice and really easy to use, right? And we see CX, which is customer experience. Oh, well, the customer experience is really good. And we just see all these acronyms that are kind of all subsets of the same idea, which is a user experience. And so when we start talking about users, we need to start thinking about, okay, well, what am I building and who are my users? So for example, at Microsoft, we're building a component library. The component library is for creating a user experience and UI elements, but our users are not, in fact, our end users, right? Our customers are using it. Our users are other developers who are going to be consuming our component library. And so we need to think about, okay, well, how do we make this a good experience for those teams who are going to be using our component library? And so it's this kind of a little bit of different mindset that comes with that. And it comes down to really, really understanding what our role is in this concept of a user experience. A lot of times we tend to kind of put ourselves in the middle and highlight, how great of a job we're doing or how awesome the thing is that we built is. But in reality, our users don't usually care about that. Our users are here trying to accomplish something. They're trying to set out on a goal. I liken it oftentimes to the idea of the hero's journey, right? We go through this that literary concept where someone starts out, they get called to action, and they go on this crazy journey, like Luke Skywalker, right? Luke Skywalker was this farm boy who gets called to be a Jedi and bring balance to the Force, right? He goes through this amazing journey, and we get to go with him on that. And so the important thing is that our users are, in fact, Luke Skywalker, right? We oftentimes view ourselves as Luke Skywalker. So when we create a product, we're like, oh, look at how amazing this product is. This is so cool. How great we made it. But in reality, we need to think about it in a different frame and say, hey, we're not the hero in this journey. We're more of the Yoda, right? We're here to help the developer or user or whoever it is be awesome. That's our goal, is to help them be amazing. And so really we need to think about it as, how are we helping people accomplish their goals on their journey? And so by changing that mindset and identifying our users and our role in that, we can provide better products right off the bat.
Okay, you've already leaked into a couple of the extra, the second and third question. Like,
Yeah.
what are they trying to accomplish? You're
Mhm.
asking yourself that. Have you thoroughly answered that, or is there more to it than?
Oh, there's more. I think there's more to it to that. Really, it's trying to. I mean, yes, actually, so for the most part, that's it. But really, it's trying to understand. Okay, knowing that what my role is now, how do I make them look amazing? How do I help them solve a problem in a way that they feel successful at it, right? We want to help them be successful on their journey and reach the end and be the amazing Luke Skywalker at the end. And so what are we doing to accelerate that? And the tricky part for that is really identifying that clearly and then making sure that we broadcast it over and over and over again, right? Because I mean, most users, when they're going out trying to solve a solution, let's say they're Googling something or Binging something or chat GPTing something, a lot of times they're coming in and they're just skimming through those results as fast as they can and trying to find a solution to their problem as quickly as possible. Our role is to make that messaging and make that problem solving piece that we're providing them as clear as possible. And then we have to broadcast it and repeat it over and over and over again, because if we're not repeating it, most people won't hear it the first time. Right. And if there's any kind of ambiguity in what we're trying to solve, they're going to miss it, right? Because they're in fast survival mode a lot of times when they're going through trying to solve these problems. And it's not until we clearly articulate that and repeat it over and over again that they're like, oh, that's what you do. I can use that to do this. Oh, and so that's the tricky part, is that once we've identified what we're solving, really make it clear, make it simple, and broadcast it over and over again.
Okay. And then number 3, how can we help them to do that? Now we know who they are, what they want to do.
Yeah. So how do we help them with that? One of the things that we need to do is really identify. So how do we help them do that? Is that broadcasting piece, right? Is making sure that we bring that to the surface and say, hey, here's how our problem. Here's how our solution solves your problem, right? And the clarity of message is really the thing that accelerates that. Now, the interesting part of this is that, whether or not they choose to pick up and use what you're providing, it really comes down to how well you can provide their success story, right? How well you can articulate how your product or whatever it is you're building makes them the hero at the end of the day. So it's really about, again, putting them in the center of it and lifting them up and showing them how you're lifting them in the process.
Okay. At number 4, you say, what do we want the user to do? Is that just basically the instructions of how to use the software, or is it more than that?
No, it's more than that. So it's usually what do we want from our users in return, right? We're about a system of outcomes. We're providing a service for users to be able to accomplish something, and then we need something in return, right? We want them either to buy our product, we want them to sign up for our email list, we want them to do XYZ, whatever it may be. We need something from them, and it's usually tied to some kind of business outcome, right? We need something so that we can be successful too. And so an example I like to use is Kroger, or a grocery store, right? Mm-hmm. Grocery stores, a lot of times, they provide a service. They have groceries and products for us to buy and sell. What do grocery stores typically want for us other than just coming in and buying and selling stuff.
What do they want from? They want us. Well, they want loyalty. They want
They
people to come
want
back to the same store over and over.
nice, and a lot of times the way they provide that is by getting our data, right?
Right.
They want our information so that they can start tailoring their product to meet our needs better, providing the appropriate coupons or discounts or whatever they may be. Now, that is often provided through a loyalty card, right? So they inflate their prices only to give us a discount for them later. I mean, the ethics of that are questionable, right?
Yeah,
But
I'm willing to give you all of my personal information in order to knock 3 cents off of this carton of milk.
exactly, right? So the idea is that, okay, we know you want to come in and buy groceries for a lower price, but we need your information. So in order to do that, we'll provide some kind of exchange. So they give us that loyalty card or discount card or whatever it is. And so by doing that, they've now not only met our needs, but now they're also meeting their business needs because they're getting our information so that they can then use that to get more business from us at the end of the day. So the interesting thing that I run into a lot of times when I talk to people about these questions is that when we say, okay, well, what do we want the user to do? It's really easy to be like, oh, it's the same thing as the first question of what they're trying to do, right? Oh, I'm a .NET engineer. I'm writing APIs. I'm writing APIs so that users can access information, and because that's what they want to do is they want to access information. And then, so what do we want the user to do? Well, we want them to access our information. So again, they get kind of lazy about it. Not even lazy. It's really just, there just needs to be a little extra layer of thought that goes into, okay, we're providing an API. We're giving you the information so that you can exchange information back and forth with us. There's something more that we need from you. Either we need to make sure that you provide us with clean data. We need to make sure that you are acknowledging that you're using our products so that we can continue to receive funding or whatever it may be, right? So there is usually something more, usually tied to a business objective of some kind, that we need to make sure that we are highlighting as we're building these user experiences. Because if we're not, then we're going to end up with a frustrated user experience at the end of the day.
Okay. So if I can distinguish between number 2, what are they trying to accomplish, versus number 4, what do we want the users to do? Number 2 is about the needs of the user. Number 4 is about the needs of us, the developer, the people that are providing it.
Exactly.
So it's just an emphasis of where that's, who wants to do that, or what those activities will benefit.
Mm-hmm.
And then number 5, how do we incentivize them to do this? Isn't building software that they've asked for enough of an incentive?
Sometimes, the incentive is there that, hey, we provided you with a really good experience. Like sometimes you'll find that you hear like, oh, Stripe has a really good developer experience, and that incentive is there just by providing clean ways to use the product and clean ways to solve their problem. But sometimes it's more explicit, like the Kroger example, where they're providing a discount card of some kind or loyalty card, where the incentive is there to provide discounted rate of groceries, while asking for user information in a kind of indiscreet way. So it can be as simple as providing an amazing experience and a clean way to solve their problem. But oftentimes, especially when it comes to asking for something from the user that they may not be willing to do, especially when it comes down to like money, when you're asking for money and things like that, it has to be a little more explicit and saying, okay, how do we incentivize them to give us their money? How do we incentivize them to give us their information, whether it be a sign-up email or whatever it may be?
Okay. Yeah. So some of those, I guess the example I was showing was that the people that ask for the software, our customers
Mm-hmm.
that we're building the software for, and in the Kroger example, that's Kroger, but the incentive is actually to Kroger's customers. There's a step beyond that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I want to I'll share with you one of my big UX failures earlier in my career. Is that I built a data entry forms, a whole bunch of them, and I was learning about relational databases. Everything was stored in a relational database in the back end. all my forms looked like relational databases. They had parent-child relationships, and my users, to me, it made total sense. I built
Mhm.
them for someone that understood referential integrity, and they couldn't understand, why can I not delete this customer? And I had to explain, well, because the customer has orders,
Mhm.
and you can't delete a parent without without orphaning the children. And they just would stare at me. They had they had to learn the concepts of referential integrity and relational databases in order to use my software.
Mhm.
It was a big failing on my part. And I had to turn my head around and say, wait a minute, I'm not looking at this the wrong way. I need to look at this from the way the user is seeing things.
Yeah, exactly. That's a perfect example, right? You had put yourself as the hero in that situation where you're like, this makes perfect sense to me. This is a great way for me to understand software. When in reality, you were, to make that shift to say, well, who are my users?
Mhm.
And what do I need to do to make them the hero, to make them accelerate and do a really good job at the end of the day? That is a huge paradigm shift especially for
Yes,
software
it was for
engineers.
me.
Yeah. Yeah. That's a great
And
example.
I see it time and time again that people will be explaining the software they built. This sometimes it's the user. Usually it's a user experience where things that are intuitive to the person that built it are not intuitive to everybody. They
Yeah.
just assume everybody knows these things. And
Hmm.
I know there's a certain arrogance to that, but I don't think they're doing it intentionally. I think they're just not they're not asking themselves these 5 questions.
Exactly, and that's part of the reason why I have these set up the way they are is because, they're simple, they're straightforward. There's not a lot of barriers to entry, and you can easily slide these into a conversation very casually without being like, well, okay, we need to set up the framework and like have a very big preamble or anything with that. The faster we can get to removing barriers to entry for a lot of these things, the more likely they are to be adopted by people. And that's where I think UX sometimes gets very complicated because you'll see, I've gone through UX workshops where we've created very detailed and very elaborate, personas for these users where,
Right.
oh, we've got Maggie, the marketer, and she likes long walks on the beach. And, we try to like create all these details. And the funny thing is that most of the time they're wrong. They're not right the first time, and that's okay. And that's one of the things that I like to highlight. And when I give this talk, is that you're going to get this wrong the first time, and that's 100% okay. Because
Okay.
as you do this, you're going to learn, right? So you're going to build an MVP or a prototype or whatever it is, and you're going to put it out there, and they're going to come back and be like, we don't really like this, or this works really well, but we don't, this doesn't work as well. And you're going to learn and you're going to understand your users better and better and better every time. And this is a very iterative process. So every time we launch something new, every time we develop something new, we start these questions over again. Okay, were our assumptions correct? No. Okay, let's adjust those assumptions. Now let's start asking these questions again and see if we can refine and tune this a little bit, because that is that's how we grow. That's how we develop. We're gonna get it wrong the first time, but that's okay. The only time we truly fail at this is if we don't learn and improve it for next time, and improve on it over and over again. So that's I think one of the biggest challenges too, is that we run into this and we're like, we totally swing and a miss on that, right? We built it at like a relational database, right? Oh, but the data's still there, the data's still good. We just need to tune that experience for the user, so now it's more adapted for what they're using, and you learn from that, right, David? I mean,
Sounds very agile. Yes.
yeah,
I didn't
exactly.
know what agile was back in those days. I delivered an entire application before I learned that it was wrong.
So back then, you just have to start a whole new application
Kind
over
of,
again,
yeah.
right?
Is there anything we have not covered that you feel is critical?
So I think one of the things that's important to understand is, so when I talk about, we're going to do this wrong, I think it's easy um, to misunderstand where we got things wrong at what point, right? And we usually have pretty good indicators. Like if we have the wrong problem that we're solving, we usually get pretty low engagement. Or if we're targeting the wrong users, we get pretty low engagement on that initial engagement. Now, a really good example is also sometimes we get the problem wrong because we misunderstood what the solution might need to be.
Sure.
One of the perfect examples is the very apocryphal Henry Ford quote, right? If we asked our
Faster
users what they
horse.
wanted, yeah, they would ask for a faster horse, right? The same idea happens with this process too. A lot of times, users will come to us and they'll solutionize and tell us what we need, when in reality, maybe we have a greater context of something and can provide a better solution for them at the end of the day. I love the story about the slow elevator. I don't know if you've heard this before or not, David.
I don't think so.
So there was an elevator at an office building, and the users were complaining about how slow the elevator would go up and down. And they were like, we need to come in and increase the speed of the elevator. Well, that would cost thousands of dollars for the company to come in and have an engineer come in and rebuild the elevator, install a faster motor. Who knows if it'd even be legal, because elevators, depending on their capacity and where they're at, can only go so fast. So instead, what they did is they changed one simple thing. They didn't change the speed of the elevator, and immediately their complaints went away. And the solution to their problem was they installed mirrors inside of the elevator. And come to find out that people like looking at themselves in the mirror. So what they did is they changed that. They improved the user experience of the actual car ride in the elevator, and it solved the user experience problem that they were having. They didn't fix the problem that the users were saying they were having. They fixed the problem that was probably more cost effective, but also the issue overall at the end of the day was, hey, we're not enjoying our elevator ride. We're
Right.
bored. It takes too long, whatever it may be. So by changing that one thing, by solving the problem that maybe wasn't the problem that they thought was originally, they were able to provide a better solution at the end of the day.
I like it.
Yeah.
Burton, where are you speaking next?
Good question. I don't have anything confirmed yet, but I'm definitely putting some talks coming up this year. I'm in Columbus, Ohio, so if you're coming out, Star Trek is one of my favorites.
Oh yeah, I think the call closes in a week.
Yeah, very exciting. I love that one. KCDC is another one that I always try to get into. Hopefully this year is my year to get into that one. So yeah, fun conferences.
I'm in the same boat. I'm waiting to hear a bunch of them. All right, Burton, thank you so much. This has been a great talk, and I appreciate your time.
Hey, thank you very much. When AI takes over, always remember that technology is our friend.